Good morning. Welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Erika Jane. I like to make a ton of random videos, usually surrounding homemaking, home bakery things, and a little bit before, a lot of pregnancy things, nesting, you name it. If I'm interested in it, I would probably make a video on it. This morning, we are going to talk birth. All things birth, baby, and how we got our sweet girl here safely. Now, I don't know how much time we'll have before she wakes up. This will probably be filmed in little parts. Just roll with what we can. Our sweet girl was born on Canada Day, July 1st, at 5:39 in the morning, after over 24 hours of labor. It ended up being a natural birth. I didn't get the epidural. Very close to a cesarean and the OR towards the end. Thankfully, we did not need to go there. It ended up being quite a borderline traumatic birth. Not even borderline. Labor was good for the most part, and then really towards the end it got kind of scary. But we'll get into that. If you are currently pregnant and not looking to consume traumatic birth stories, you may want to pop out of this. If you if this will trigger you in any way, shape, or form, pop out of this. You don't need to watch this. There is no need to put yourself through that. I know when I was pregnant, I was avoiding watching scary birth stories. I was fast forwarding the dramatic births on TV, things like that, because I didn't want to put that into my mind. I knew it was possible. I knew the realities of C-section and was preparing in other ways, but I didn't want to watch or consume things like that. So I completely understand. Do what is best for you. I'm going to share as much as I remember. Honestly, there's some things that I probably don't, and my partner remembers more so than I do. But we'll just get into that. So, I started labor on Monday, June 30th. Really in the night, probably 3 a.m. was when I was first aware that okay, I think this is early stages of labor. When I went to bed, I thought my stomach was just kind of upset. I was having kind of burning cramps, worse than period, but felt kind of just a very upset stomach. And then my bloody show began. So I first saw blood around 3 or 4 in the morning, and that was when I was waking up to the pain of contractions. And then by 5:45 I was certain I was in labor, and I woke my partner up and let him know that yes, I think this is the day, this is happening. And so I was very awake from that point on. And then contractions started honestly ramping up pretty quickly. Pretty much from that point on, I couldn't sleep through the pain. So I was just kind of trying to move through them. I was on my exercise ball for quite a while downstairs. Just trying to move through the contractions. I was a bit nauseous, but not crazy yet. I just started by eating watermelon throughout the morning, which I think was good, just keeping me hydrated. And then I just had peanut butter toast, and that's pretty much all I ate for most of the day that I was in labor. And by I think the first call we made to the midwives was around 11 in the morning, and that was when I was I was uncomfortable. I was struggling, but I was able to talk through the contractions and have a conversation with her. And they were about every 5 minutes and lasting for like right around a minute. And so we didn't go to the hospital yet. Funny and not funny, we were actually getting our well set up while I was in labor. So there was people outside like setting up our well pump. Honestly, that had been such a journey. It was supposed to be done back in March, and where we live on the island is just, it's hard to get work done, just given where we live. So the people coming to do our well are like over 2 hours away, but they still service this area. So they just like, getting service done on the island is a task. But that's beside the point. So the well was getting set up. We had people outside working on it. I was full on in labor, like early labor, not active labor. So just moving through the contractions. Ended up having to talk to the guys doing the work at one point because Connor went to the neighbors to like let them know I was in labor and that like we needed help to like look out for the cats. This had already been a conversation, but just to be like, hey, you still good? This is happening. We're going to be going to the hospital tonight. And then it was probably around like 1 or 2. And by like 3 p.m., I was like, we need to go to the hospital. Like, we need to start the journey. Because the hospital's about an hour away from where we live. So I wanted to make sure we were actually near the hospital before it got too intense, / before I was like in intense active labor and having to be in the car. Baby girl. And then, so we called our midwife again, and it was at the point where I couldn't really talk through contractions. I was just focusing on them, breathing through them. They were like every 4 minutes, a minute long, like the 411 rule. That's what they generally say to go into the hospitals when you're at that point. So contractions are about 4 minutes apart, lasting for a minute, and it's been over an hour. So we got to the hospital a little bit after 4 p.m. Did a cervical check. I was 3 centimeters, almost 4 centimeters dilated, but how they explained it was I was already 90% effaced. My cervix was very like ready to go. She said she could have stretched me to like 5 centimeters if I wanted to, but I didn't. I just wanted things to kind of progress naturally how they were going. I did get some Gravol at the hospital and morphine at this point. So that kind of helped me like not relax, but gave me a bit of relief. Now they won't admit you to the hospital until you're 4 or 5 centimeters. So we actually went to a hotel and I continued to labor at the hotel until about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And thankfully, like, we got a hotel room with a bathtub, one of those like motels where you just kind of drive up and like you can park outside the room. Connor got some food. I tried to eat some French fries in the bathtub. I sat in the tub for probably like 2 hours with contractions, just kind of rolling through. And then it got to the point where it was too uncomfortable. It's just not a good tub to labor in, like just like a hard bathtub, not a birth tub. So ended up getting out, started vomiting at the hotel, which I was one of the signs where I knew I was getting closer to like active labor. I thought I was probably in it. And then at 8:30, we called the midwife again and said we were going to come in. And then when I got to the hospital the second time, I was about 5 centimeters dilated. So they did admit me. We went into the labor and delivery room, got set up. I ended up like laboring, just kind of walking around the hospital bed for a little bit, and then I transferred to the shower. Now, the hospital we were at, they do not have birth pools, and they don't allow you to birth in the shower. There's just regulations around that. There's only one hospital in Nova Scotia where you can birth in a birth pool, and that was in Halifax. So that's like 3 hours from where we were. So that was not happening, but I was able to labor in the shower for like a few hours. Like I was probably in there like 3 or 4, I don't even know how long. Long enough that our midwives switched over. So at midnight, the one midwife that we had done the initial kind of checks with, she was off call, and then another midwife was on call. So they transferred care. And then the midwife that was there for my birth was now supporting me. And so I was laboring in the shower for quite a few hours. Connor was just spraying my back with the hot water. And then, yeah, vomiting more in the shower. Lots of fun, just going through it. The water did like provide a bunch of relief though. And then it got to the point where I wanted something a little bit more, but not an epidural. And before like labor, like meeting with the midwives and everything, we had talked about like nitrous oxide, things like that, like that I could use instead. So that's like laughing gas. So breathing through the mask during contractions. And a big reason why that makes a difference is because it gets you to focus on your breathing, and breathing does a ton in terms of like getting you through labor. So did that for a while longer, and then ended up getting out of the shower and kind of switching to the bed. But laying was really painful. So I was kind of walking around, but I had also been up already for like 24 hours. So they really wanted me to get some rest before the actual pushing stage started. But while I was in the shower, I was like my body through the contractions was already starting to like kind of push, like the reflex, like it's there. And if you've had an unmedicated birth, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but your body starts like, it starts pushing naturally. So that was happening. It was all coming together. And yeah, they checked me again, and I was like, I was ready. I was ready to go. My body was pushing, things were starting. And then all of a sudden, like, it was like, I was like laboring, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, no, we need to get more help in here. So they called more nurses in, and then I started pushing and went through so many different positions of pushing. I was on my back at one point, I was on my side, I was on all fours, I was hanging over the bed. And then that's when it got very intense very quickly. So she ended up getting stuck. Now, we're not sharing her face or anything on the internet. But yeah, you can see she's quite a big girl. So she was 9 pounds, 13 ounces when she was born. She's over 10 pounds already. And she got stuck. So she had a shoulder dystocia, and really they said the only reason she was able to come out, well, one being my midwife reached in and pulled her out because she got stuck, but was because I didn't get the epidural. So they were able to put me in all these positions to help her get out. So the biggest one was I was on all fours over the bed, and then I had to lift my leg up, which is kind of a standard position they use for shoulder dystocia because it opens up your pelvis a bit more. And that ended up being like how she was born. I was like face down, like over the top of the bed, and that's how they got her out. But it got scary very quickly. So when she did get stuck, there was talk of scissors, and I started panicking because episiotomy is not something I was consenting to. I had no interest in an episiotomy. Thankfully, though, midwives really, like, there are no routine episiotomies. That would be something that, like, life or death situation, and even if I said no, they wouldn't do it. So I'm grateful for that, but also grateful that they knew when to step in and when was necessary for them to make interventions. So she was stuck. Her heart rate dipped a little bit, but there was more concern because the cord was wrapped around her neck multiple times and then around her body very tightly. So it was, my midwife has been doing this for quite a while, and she said it was the worst she had ever seen, to the point where it was like they could barely cut the cord without cutting her because it was so tight around her body. So it actually took them a few times to get the cord cut. So that was the start of it. And then she needed resuscitation for the first like minute and a half. And then I was barely coherent at this point, like pushing for that long. And like, that was intense. Like the primal instinct that comes over you, like I was straight up screaming and like screaming into the nitrous oxide mask. All of the nurses around me, like encouraging me, yelling to push, like, you got this. And I was pushing like with my contractions to help her get out, like, because I could feel them. So that was how she was able to get out, was because I was listening to what my body was doing and pushing on the contractions and then not pushing when I wasn't contracting. So yeah, once she was actually out though is when it started to get scary, because there was one doctor that once she came out, they thought that she had a brain bleed. So they were worried the way her eyes were going and then her head. So they thought there was a brain bleed at first. There was shoulder dystocia, and then she needed like resuscitation. So there was a lot of concerns right off the bat. And so while all that was happening, they were saying that we were going to be airlifted to the IWK in Halifax. So that was terrifying. And then while that was happening simultaneously, my placenta had gotten stuck and was in there for longer than it should have. So then my risk of hemorrhaging increases like exponentially. So then they started giving me Pitocin, which was one thing I really didn't want. Because I know the effects of Pitocin, the increase of postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, being on Pitocin, things like that. So that was something I really wanted to avoid. But the reality was I was too at risk of hemorrhaging to avoid that. So they needed my uterus to start contracting fast, because it had kind of near an hour where my placenta was stuck. And so they had taken her to the nursery, so I didn't get skin to skin with her right away. I didn't see her right after I gave birth. They had to take her and focus on making sure she was okay. Now, we had a lot of plans of like using oral vitamin K, not getting the vitamin K injection, and the reality became they were worried about a brain bleed for her. So it was more important for her to get the vitamin K right away, because the vitamin K is for blood clotting. So we agreed to do the vitamin K shot because that was way worse of an outcome than a possible adverse reaction from the vitamin K. So we made that decision. Let that happen. And then, they had her still. And while that was all happening, the OB was in looking at me and basically telling them to prepare an OR for me. So they were getting IVs in. I had one in one arm, and then they were trying to get a second one in the other arm, and then that wasn't working. And then the OB ended up pulling the placenta out of me. So that was a time. But it came out in one piece. And yeah, very intense. But when they check to see if there is like more bleeding, they push on your stomach right after, and like, not to be graphic, but it like spurted out. So seeing OB's reaction was a little bit scary, because it just like, they pushed on my stomach after, and it was just like a gush. So then I was hooked up to oxytocin and an IV, and they were just focusing on me not hemorrhaging. And then she was also in the nursery at that time. They were working on her. So there was just a lot of scary things happening all at once. And then I didn't need to go to the ER, thank God. And then things with her ended up being a lot better than they initially thought. So there wasn't a brain bleed. She did have the shoulder dystocia, and then they were worried about her blood sugar levels because of how big she was. So she was 9 pounds, 13 ounces. And being that big of a baby, their sugars can drop quite drastically. So then she was on an IV. She was on glucose, like right after birth until, say, 2 or 3 days after. Yeah, we were in the hospital Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday we got out. And she got the IV out Wednesday? Potentially Tuesday. I don't know. It's honestly all kind of a blur. But once she got the IV out, then they monitor her sugars to make sure everything was okay. And thankfully it was. Then jaundice was the next concern. So she had 3 or 4 bilirubin tests where they were kind of monitoring her levels, and it was more of a concern because she needed resuscitation. So they were watching that a bit more closely, and she was quite yellow. So that we didn't actually get the all clear until after we were home on the Saturday. So being in midwife care, graciously, they do home visits after your birth and after she's already here. So we got her to the hospital Thursday. Was it Thursday? Yeah. And then we had to go to the hospital Friday morning and do blood work on her. And then where we live, there was construction on the causeway, so the blood collection ended up getting stuck and sitting for too long. So the midwife came back Friday night and did another round of blood work on her. And then things looked pretty good, and they just wanted to make sure she was actually like flushing it out. So getting some poos, getting some pees out. And then if she didn't, we were going to redo the bilirubin test again on Sunday. But they felt confident enough that she was doing good with how she was eating, how she was flushing stuff out. So we didn't need to do more blood work, thankfully, because she was getting pricked so much. She did really well though, like considering, very traumatic entrance for her, very traumatic few days starting of her life, way more invasive than I had wanted. And that's just the reality. Like, you can plan a birth as much as you want. I wanted as natural as possible. And the reality was she was a really big girl, and I'm really grateful we were in the hospital for birth, because it scares me to know what it would have been like if we were home, because we are so isolated and we're not near a hospital. So I'm really grateful we went the route that we did with midwives, but in the hospital. So it was a good balance there. We got the care we needed when we needed it, and the nurses and the hospital staff were incredible. the few days after giving birth as well. Like, when I tell you, once those hormones come crashing down, they come freaking crashing down. So I would say the first night, like, was good, smooth. I was trying to do breastfeeding, which was excruciatingly painful, which we later learned she has a tongue tie, but not like the normal common tongue tie. It's a bit of a different one. So the only specialist that deals with those is in Halifax. So we did have her tongue tie clipped, like, generally at this hospital, but it wasn't enough to kind of relieve the tongue tie that she does have. So it was still, like, there was a relief at first, and then it was just a struggle to get her to latch and stay on. My nipples were completely cracked, scabbed, just not doing well already, like, just 2 days after birth. So it was hard. Oh my God, breastfeeding was way harder than I ever anticipated, and way more, like, mentally straining as well, because she wanted to feed all the time because she wasn't getting that much. Like, her latch was so shallow as well. So there was a lot of factors in there, but the second night in the hospital, which we actually almost went home, like, before the second night, and thankfully the midwives made the decision, like, to encourage us to stay. They're like, with what has happened, the traumatic entrance, breastfeeding, we'd feel a lot more comfortable if you did stay, but, like, they can't force you to stay, right? And we took their advice and did stay, and I'm really, really grateful we did. We ended up staying another night after as well, so it made sense to be there. So the second night, I could not get her to latch. I was in agony. She was screaming, like, scream crying. I was crying, like, sobbing, because my hormones all, like, dropped at that period as well. So it was really stressful to, like, be trying to feed her, not being able to get food to her, seeing how distressed she was, and, like, oh my God, yeah, it's hard to explain unless you've been in that situation. Like, if you've tried to breastfeed, you may know what I'm talking about, and, like, if you've given birth, you understand the change in hormones. But oh my God, nothing like I have ever experienced in my life, ever. So God bless the nurses. They, like, consoled me, got me a breast pump in the hospital room. We started pumping colostrum. We were syringe feeding her. And then the nurses actually took her out to the nurses' station for a few hours to, like, one, give me a break so I could try and get a couple hours of sleep, and then also just, like, be with her, because I was sobbing. I couldn't get her to calm down, and they ended up just, like, taking her out there with some colostrum. They did supplement a bit of formula, to make sure she got enough food, because she hadn't gotten enough food. So that was good. They had her until, like, 1:40 in the morning, and then we took her back into our room. And by that point, I had some colostrum in the syringes. I was making a ton by that point. So that was, like, the second night. And then by the third night, we had kind of got a little bit more of the hang of it. So I was still pumping colostrum. And then my milk didn't come in till I actually got home. But we still tried. Like, I still wanted to try and breastfeed. So we met with a lactation consultant in the hospital. We tried more different latching techniques, football holds, lying down, feeding, like, different things like that, to try and find one that was actually comfortable and actually doable. And then the day we left, we got her tongue tie clipped, and probably harder for me. Like, she wasn't that upset by it, but it's distressing hearing your baby cry and knowing they're in pain, and like it needs to be done. Like it's a thing that, like, it affects their breathing, it affects a lot of things. So I am glad we did it. But yeah, very intense when you're on that hormone roller coaster. So we ended up getting discharged, and then putting her in her little car seat was so stressful. She was upset for the first little bit, and then once she got moving in the car seat, she was okay, and she didn't make a sound the entire drive home. Of course, I sat in the back seat beside her, like holding her head up, like just like watching her the entire drive. Probably the most stressful drive we've ever taken back. But she was okay. Everything was okay. And then the midwives, they came to see us, I guess the next day, that like after we got home. So we got home on the Thursday, and they came to see us on the Friday, and then as well on Sunday. And the first visit, I was still like kind of determined to try and breastfeed, so they tried to help me latching, and then I decided to keep pumping. And then my milk came in, say Friday night, so that was intense. Like 1 minute there's nothing, and then all of a sudden my shirt is soaking wet. So literally, like you see in the TV shows where you're just like leaking through your shirt, that was what happened exactly. But it was kind of relief because we were able to start seeing what she was getting. So we started feeding her bottles of my breast milk, and she was way more content. She was peeing enough. She was having bowel movements. Things were moving in the right direction. And that was a really big part of why, like, jaundice no longer became a worry by Sunday, was because we were able to start actually flushing it out of her. So yeah, ending up choosing exclusive pumping for right now, and that has been quite a big relief mentally. One, because we see how much food she's getting. She's way more content, because they pick up on it when, like, you're in pain trying to feed them, consistently unlatching them. They're not getting enough food. She's screaming. Like, they can tell that you're stressed. They can tell you're in pain and, like, are not enjoying it, and it affects your bond with them. So I was really grateful that we already had a breast pump here. Like, I had bought one while I was pregnant. So I was able to just keep pumping here. And now I'm at a point where I definitely have an oversupply, graciously. I'm hoping that lasts. But I've been pumping now like every 2 or 3 hours and getting like sometimes 200 milliliters on each breast. One of them's a bit lower most of the time. Like, my right one's outperforming the left. But that has been a huge relief for my mental health and my sanity in general. And it's been helpful because it gives my partner a chance to feed her as well. So through the night, he can feed her a bottle while I'm pumping, and then we can change her, put her back to bed. And she's been getting longer stretches of sleep. I actually had a 4-hour stretch of sleep for her, not last night, but the night before. So amazing. She's also already over her birth weight, and that was at 5 days post-birth, which they usually like to see that 2 weeks after your baby's born. They like them to be over their birth weight again, and she's well over 10 pounds now. So she is doing great in that way. So that's been a huge, huge relief. And now I am over a week postpartum. I'm like a week and a half postpartum at this point. So I gave birth on Canada Day, and it's the 10th now. I think it's the 10th. So we're doing good. We're doing really good, considering. I'm definitely still processing the birth in general, and I think that's going to be something I process for a long time to come. I don't know if I'm going to go to therapy at this stage, Right now, we're quite supported, though, by midwives, and there are like public health nurses that have been coming by. So had a visit earlier this week. We're going to have a visit again early next week, and that's just been really reassuring. And they check in on me, my mental health, how I'm doing physically. They check in on her, how she's doing. It just gives you a bit more peace of mind. So if and when I start therapy for the birth, it probably won't be quite yet, but I do know how to get access to those resources, so that's a relief there. But definitely things are just kind of coming up periodically. Like I remember something about the birth, or I remember like how I felt after, or like I just start crying because I'm like feeling through what happened. But it will probably be something I'm processing for some time. It is weird though. It's exactly how they say, like, the second you give birth and you're through that pain and like you see them and like it's gone. Like it's like mama mode takes over entirely. Like I am stitched up, have a 2nd-degree tear. Could have been a lot worse, but like I can't sit still. Like I still can't sit on my butt really, because of the pain. Yet like nothing I would not do to take care of her. And it's weird how like overpowering that is, but entirely worth it. Like I would do it again to get her here, like 110%. Like there's no doubt in my mind. And the love I feel for this little human already is insane. And it's weird because when I was pregnant, I didn't like feel like I had as much of a connection. Like I might have like kind of disassociated from it a bit because I was so sick for the first little bit. It was hard to be very excited, and then I was so physically uncomfortable by the end of it. I'll put a picture in of how big I was, but I could barely bend my knees without them giving out. Like I was in so much pain. And now it's like, no, I'd do it again. Probably not for a while. Like physically, I don't think I'm going to be ready to have another child for probably a couple years. Just physically speaking. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Because your mind is a powerful thing. And that is what I'm realizing. But yeah, all in all, she is here. We're safe. We're okay. Very intense birth. Did not go how I planned or had necessarily hoped, but it went like as best as it could in that situation, really. So I'm really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for how I prepared mentally, physically, how I took care of myself leading up to pregnancy and in pregnancy. I think it made a really big difference to get the outcome that we did have, because it could have been a lot worse. A lot of people are shocked I didn't have a C-section because that, like, she got stuck. She was very stuck. My midwife literally was up in there, pulled her out herself, which I think is why I am so sore now at this point, because it's like only had a 2nd-degree tear. And I say only, they thought I had a 3rd degree at first. It ended up being better than that, but there's a lot of bruising down there as well, just because of how she came out. So that's contributing to a lot of my pain now at this stage, is also the bruising as well as the stitches. So all in all, we're doing good considering. Very grateful for breast pump, switching over to that. And I think the rest of my healing will just be a matter of time and letting myself actually process it. So that's where we're at. We're here. She's safe. I'm really grateful for how it unfolded in the end. Oh, baby girl. But we're gonna go probably do some more feeding, check her diaper, go through all of that, and just soak in these newborn snuggles. So I don't know when I'll be back to regular programming. We'll see. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If this is any solace for your own birth prep, just prepare for the unexpected. Know you can do it, and like, you're going to surprise yourself by how much you can handle and the transformation that birth is going to put you through. I am a different person than before I gave birth. I will never be that person again before I gave birth, and that is just the reality. Motherhood is a transformation, and I'm really grateful to be here in this position. But before I start crying more, we'll close this out. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you soon.